video is going. Okay. Hello. So we are here for the second class that I have scheduled for the 404 event not found Rising Winds Amtgard joint event. This one is a downspear course. So I'm joined again by Kenshin, and we are just kind of go through it. For downspears, they're not a super common weapon throughout a lot of Amtgard. Amtgard is pretty shot through with them.
They're getting a lot more traction now. Back when you and I would have been new fighters, they were not super prevalent like they are today. Now you go to any given Inner Kingdom ditch with more than 30 people on it, you're going to see at least a handful, 3 or 4 downspears out there. It wasn't always like that. But they're becoming a lot more popular because they're honestly just a lot of fun.
Yeah, they're fun. They can be very effective. For me, I get a ton of mileage from them in a ditch. When you have multiple teammates you can play off of, you have multiple opponents you're playing against. But they're also really, really good for one-on-one fighting. So we're gonna cover a bit of both of those today is kind of the idea. Let's get to it. The downspear, kind of going through the strengths and weaknesses. The strengths are somewhat unique. That's one of the reasons they're so fun to fight with. Is that you have a variety of shots that you can throw at a variety of ranges. You are. I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the previous course, but a downspear fighter is really kind of like a mediocre spear, most times, really sort of a mediocre spear fighter with what should be a really rather dangerous single short sword fighter defending them. So the types of shots you're going to be throwing are going to be similar to those types of shots with a couple of fun and interesting exceptions. So, at the base level, the obvious stuff is you're going to be attacking from long range with a downspear. I very heavily recommend one that you can slash with. Kenshin here uses one primarily that is stab only.
Not this one.
This one is not. But so there are a couple of different approaches to that. But the general idea is you're wanting to attack at about maximum range with downspear. And for me, the big part is forcing your opponent to close past the downspear, ideally getting them to close with a stance that doesn't work well against a single short sword fighter when they get there. And that's kind of the concept that I try to keep in mind, and there's going to be a number of different ways to execute that, but that's what I'm trying to do, is to get my opponent to close badly with me. Now, there are definitely other schools of thought. The problem is I'm not great with the downspear portion itself, so I use that largely as a distraction and do other things. I will swing, I will get my shots in where I can, but I don't expect to do a whole lot of killing with the downspear, whereas people who are better with the downspear are going to get a lot of work in with that, and the short sword is kind of the backup for if that doesn't work.
Now the way that this was explained to me a long time ago was that a lot of the goal of the downspear is to distract them from the short sword, which is just exactly what Bighead said. A lot of your goal here is for them to be afraid of this to the point they kind of forget that you have a single short sword that you can do anything with. So encouraging them to kind of make that close to get past the threat of the downspear and put them into the threat of the short sword is key. It's a big thing. Also like Bighead said, he a lot of the time isn't necessarily searching for the downspear kill. He's kind of using the downspear as a tool to open up the single sword kill, which is great and definitely works. I find myself splitting a little more probably in favor towards the downspear. I tend to get more of my kills with the spear itself, usually by stabbing someone right there. Or right in the appendix. That's where I hit them most of the time. And the way to do that is to get them to want to close on you. So just kind of throw some stuff out there that you're not really too concerned about it hitting. If they chop it out of the way, you still got your sword to take care of business. But basically, what I want to do is make you hate me so bad that you want to aggress on me and kill me right now. And if I can do that, then I have generally won the fight. Because if someone's, especially if they're making like big kind of aggressive closing steps, it's easy for me to hit them in the breadbasket. So yeah, that's key number one. I think takeaway number one is the goal is to try to make your opponent come to you in a way either that is to get past the threat of your down spear or to close on you, so they think that you're going to be pinned up with your equipment against your body, so you can't really do anything about it. But there's some ways around that we will get into soon.
Yeah.
So first big takeaway: make them close.
Yeah, and also I mentioned this in the previous class, but it's really important. As the downspear fighter, recognize that like 90% of people don't have a great idea of how to fight a downspear, and what they're going to do overwhelmingly is smack the heck out of your downspear because they feel like they're accomplishing a lot out of it.
Yep, they're getting this big scary thing out of the way, so then they can get hit by the smaller, less scary thing.
Right.
But in the mind of the person fighting against the downspear, this happens to me all the time. Also, my downspear is really light, so it's really easy for people to manipulate. This one's a little heavier, so it's a little harder to do than that. But yeah, it happens to me a lot. People will come and just sort of, you do it to me a lot. Sweep my downspear out of the way. Tim does it to me a lot because he knows that I can't recover into a slash 90% of the time because I'm using my own downspear. My only option is to stab. I like it like that. It's kind of a challenge. I don't know why I'm so set on stabbing the downspears, but I am, and that's just how it is. But yeah, there's in terms of actually being effective with a downspear, a slash legal downspear is generally the way to go. Because like I was saying, so if you sweep, or here I'll sweep yours since you're actually teaching this class now.
Okay. Yeah.
This is your class, not mine.
So I guess going into that just very briefly. The idea is to have some sort of idea, or is to have some sort of plan in mind for when your opponent does that, because your opponent's going to do it.
It's going to happen.
So for me, I like personally to keep pressure. I like to have my downspear on my toe.
Yeah, you'll notice us both doing that, just kind of passively. A lot of downspear fighters you'll see just kind of resting the tip of their downspear on their toe. This serves a couple purposes. One of which being, if you're resting your downspear tip on the ground, you're wearing it out quicker. You're also just kind of getting your stuff dirty, and no one likes that. But also, a more practical application, other than just saving the stab tip, is so say you want to. This works better as a short person. I think this is not something I ever see you do, but it's something I do, not frequently, but often enough that I notice. So like if someone's taller than you and swinging for up here, you're accomplishing two things here. So by raising your foot and pushing your downspear through your grip, you're blocking this part of your body. You're also putting yourself in a position to take a big step forward and go. So if you can kind of bait someone into that far away shoulder slot try with your downspear balanced on your toe, you can get some leverage out of just kind of kicking it up and taking a step forward.
Yeah. Whereas, like, I use it for a couple of purposes outside of that, because, yeah, I almost never choke up on my downspear. It's kind of cold day in hell. It's really, if I'm fighting someone with a pole arm...
I do it all the time. I do it constantly.
But outside of very specific circumstances, I'm fighting with my downspear with my hand at the absolute tip. Now, with my hand and my foot applying pressure to opposite sides of the downspear, this means that when people try to sweep my downspear aside, if I don't want it to move, I can just kind of press up with the foot and press down with the hand, and it doesn't really go anywhere.
That's pretty, that's the normal swing I'd be swinging.
Yeah. So. And doing things like angling towards it can make it so that if someone's really committing to it, I can do a little bit additional stuff to prevent it from moving. This is kind of short into the video for tricks, but since we're talking about beating the downspear in the first place, one of my absolute favorite things is if they try to swing across the body so that they're knocking the downspear towards this side, shoving the downspear with your sword is one of the funniest things you'll ever be able to do as a downspear fighter. Because if they are a flow fighter or a single short sword fighter, they usually just step into death.
They will die there. I have died to that more than once and more times than I care to remember.
So it's just a little trick. You've got the sword there anyway. If they swing to knock the downspear across your body, which is not uncommon because people think it's going to tie you up in your own equipment. It's really not that hard, even without shoving it, to just kind of use your body to bounce it back. For me, it's much more effective in fighting against downspear. Huh?
I said it's a good polearm trick too, to kind of just use your body as leverage.
Oh, yeah,
Use your chest and your hips as like, that's how you're throwing the shot more than using your arm.
Yeah. So it's much more effective if you're fighting against a downspear, in my opinion, to come across and knock it out that way.
Yep.
Because downspear fighters, you do have the option of trying to drop a shot in off of that, turning it essentially into like a windmilling swing.
Dangerous. Don't try that at home.
It's dangerous. Don't try it at home. I personally don't want to throw a shot when I don't have my downspear completely under my control, because it's a big weapon that rides up into faces pretty easily if you're not being very careful about it. So if someone really knocks my downspear out this way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into a single short sword stance, step back, and then cycle my hands to get the thing back under control and in front of me. So I'm going to do what I can to prevent that from happening. Again, if they want to swing across that way, I'm going to apply pressure. I'm going to tighten my grip
into it a little
down.
bit. Yeah.
I'm going to turn into it a little bit, and ideally it's not going to do anything. Even better than that, if I can punish them for trying, great.
Yeah.
But I don't want my downspear to get knocked anywhere from this side, from the right side of my body, across and out.
Yeah, you never want the tip of your downspear behind you, pretty much ever. There's a couple specific situations where it's okay, but especially if you're a beginner to the downspear, the probably the worst position your downspear can be in is with this part behind you. You don't want this behind you ever.
Yeah, it's not doing good things for you.
No, it's more of a detriment than a help at that point.
So yeah, going through that, really the big takeaway again is your opponent's going to try to beat the hell out of your downspear.
Yep.
And just be ready for it. Acknowledge the fact it's going to happen. Have some sort of plan in mind for what you're going to do if they try, what you're going to do if they succeed, so that you don't sit there and look foolish and your spear's all of a sudden way out here and you don't know what you're doing, and then they step forward and they kill the single short sword fighter who's worried about their left hand.
Right.
Because that is the big thing, is if that downspear does go out of play, you are suddenly a single short sword fighter until you can bring it back.
So if you're fighting someone and they're doing that to you, and you're not able to necessarily stop them from doing it, if they're just overpowering you or whatever like that, the best thing that I found to be ready to counter with, because so sweep my spear.
Okay.
We both really messed that up the other day. Let's try that again. Just be ready to kind of follow the momentum of the spear, or try it from the other side. Wait, I didn't do that right. And that's the time where you're going to throw a high cross, which, not the best shot in Amtgard, but,
Yeah, if they're going to commit to really knocking your spear,
they're gonna open themselves up to getting hit right there. So basically, you have to know that it's coming, and just accept it, and be ready to do something with it.
Yeah. So acknowledge that and come up with a game plan. That's going to be largely based off of your own personal style. Downspear, I love the fact that if you come across like 5 different downspear fighters, you're going to have at least 4 different styles.
Oh yeah.
That you're going to run across. Everyone's got their own particular way of doing things. So I'm going to cover some of what I do. Jake's going to cover some of what he does, and ideally you'll be able to look at that and go, okay, there are things that I can pick out of that I can use.
Don't take what either of us are saying here as the one and only way to do this. If you get something out of it that you can say, oh, I could do that, and you can make it work for you, then that's our goal, is to just show you some things that we do that you might be able to take for yourself and make it work too.
Yeah.
Because we know that we're not the authority on downspear fighting, because really I don't know that anyone is. Because like you said, it's just so different from person to person. Your body type has a lot to do with it too, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge proponent of that fact for all of Amtgard fighting. Your height, your size, width-wise, it all is more of a factor than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah. So don't drop the sword. Then you're in a real bad spot. But yeah, I guess kind of going through, one of the big things that I want to mention that I won't have to do a whole lot of giving examples on, but I think is one of the biggest strengths of downspear, talking about it during a ditch or it during a battle game, is the fact that in a line fight, a downspear, like if I'm fighting with a sword and board, I'm really engaged with one person and partially engaged with two others, right? So there's the person I'm fighting, and then there's the person to each side of them. I have to respect the people on each side of them and try to kill this person. Maybe I can get a good kill on the person next to him if they're like particularly not paying attention. But really what I'm doing is I'm engaged with one person and having to worry about getting engaged by two more. With a down spear, there's the person in front of you, there's the person to their sides, and there's a person to their sides as well. And your sphere of influence with a down spear is very similar to that of a polearm. Your risk is just higher to do so. So a lot of what I'm going to worry about as a down spear fighter in those sorts of situations is preventing the person who's directly in front of me from charging me while trying to get kills on them and everyone around them. So, because the people to the side can't worry about me too much, usually I'm going to be, a half step or a full step back from where other people are from the engagement range. So it's not as easy for them to take pot shots at me. It's about as easy for me to take pot shots at them anyway. So what I'm really going to be worried about, both because of my height advantage, because of the fact that I have, longer equipment, most of what I'm going to be doing with a down spear against anything other than a down spear or a polearm is negating their charge. So I'll go into that for a bit because that seems like a good place to go.
That's important because a lot of people, like we said earlier, a lot of people's instincts are going to be to get past the threat range of the spear.
Do you want to grab the board?
I'll grab the board.
So people are going to be trying to get past the threat range of the spear. People are going to try to close on you because really, if they can get to you, down spears are oftentimes somewhat unwieldy defensive devices. You definitely have your advantages, but your advantages are pretty specific. So we're just going to switch sides. So we're going sword side on or shield side on Kenshin here. I mentioned this in the previous class. It's much easier with a down spear. Don't be afraid to take a leg. It's hilarious. It works. They aren't charging you if they can't use their legs.
Right.
They know that too, right? So between not being afraid to take the leg and certainly not being afraid to show that you're trying to take the leg, you've got a lot of things that you can do. What I'm wanting to do, like I had said in the beginning, is get him to close with me in a way that keeps him out of a good position to actually fight a single short sword fighter, and that's really the goal that I'm going to have. So if he's back at about maximum engagement range, what I'm going to try to do is throw shots down here. They're going to get him to cover with a shield, which allow for easy shots there. Now, most players will figure out pretty quickly that just running in a down spear and trying to block with their shield without paying attention to the sword is going to get them killed very, very quickly. So you start to build levels, of the chess game a couple moves ahead pretty quickly against people. But some of the easiest things you can do are going to be to throw to one side, just like a flow fighter, is to throw to one side, get my opponent to react to that, and then throw the other way. The advantage that down spear has over a flow fighter is that manipulating equipment is very, very much into people's heads because they think of it as a spear. Because it's long. So if my opponent is pushing with a piece of their equipment, my down spear, I can start stepping away, which is a lot of times going to get them to do things. And essentially at this point, I've locked up their sword as opposed to them locking up my spear. So if he charges in and pushes my spear out to the side, I can do things like go for a back wrap and stuff like that in such a way that he got there, he completed his goal, and because his goal was the wrong goal, he died because of it. I'm gonna let out a secret of the tall people on this one because this is a super, super useful thing. But if I'm fighting my opponent and he's charging me, if we're not in a line fight, but he's actually just directly charging me with a sword and board, if I can get him with his left foot forward as he's taking the step, if I can step in and hit him in the knee here, 99 times out of 100 with that big forward momentum, that boardman is going to do the exact same thing, which is they're going to step forward with the right leg. As I step back, they're going to step forward with the right, and then as they extend down, because they're going to that nice swordsman or shieldman power slide, they're going to swing for this hip. Now we get into some of the strengths of the downspear, which is that if I can take this leg with the sword while he's taking a step, can you take a step back? I'm not trying to be out of frame.
Right.
I'll angle here, so if you want to step there. Okay. So if he's taking that step forward to the left, bam, he's going to start extending down into a slide, which overwhelmingly is actually going to be for a hip round. It doesn't seem like that when it's in slow motion.
You're right. Yeah, because if I'm on asphalt,
Yeah.
I'm old, I'm fat, my knees are doing this.
And you're not running full tilt when this is happening.
Right. So if let's pretend I am
Boom.
doing this, coming down.
So if I put my spear to the side like this, he has no way of chopping through that defense while going down. If he's throwing,
But it doesn't look that way.
If he's throwing for the hip, there's just no way around that block. So since this is an effective block for what he's trying to do, all I have to do at that point, having taken the leg, is drop across into an elbow, and that's an easy win. Tall people know this. We like doing it. We know that if a short person is charging us, which is not uncommon, if we can take the shield leg, that person's going to do a power slide forward and go for a sword side hip. And if we have some sort of counter to that, we've won that fight. It's somewhat specific to set up. You have to get your distancing right, so you can get your timing right, so you can, at maximum range, hit that left knee. But it is an incredibly efficient shot. It's an incredibly high percentage shot. The only counter to it is for them to not throw a shot while they're sliding down. If they are patient enough, then it won't work, but you've lost nothing. You've just legged them and gotten knocked. But with a down spear, it is super easy to do because you have that additional block. You can also do it from a little bit further away, but you won't necessarily get that hip shot out of them in the same way, and your block is further away. But again, if they're running full tilt at you, swinging for legs with this is a lot of times going to get them to push with their shield in the same way they would try to manipulate a pole, which is still going to leave their shield out of position for when they actually get there. So that's less for the immediate sally forth in a ditch line that you're going to be worried about. But that is absolutely something that you can do in like a flank fight or one-on-one battle game type situation. Your opponent is trying to charge you down. Feel free to use stuff like that. It's gonna work a lot of the time. You just have to make sure you get your distance control correct, so you're hitting shield side leg, getting them to draw out that power slide left side hip, and it's an easy block over here with a down spear, easy win. So going a little bit more into the ditch style stuff, you can advance on, or your opponent can advance on you, or you can advance on them, and the type of fighting that you're doing is going to be very, very similar in either case. You're looking at closing distances. So while my opponent closing on me and me throwing down here and throwing up here is going to work, it also works just as well for him to be a static fighter and for me to here through it. And that's going to work for really any opposite quadrants that you want him to go. I can bring it over here and come up for that shot. This would be kind of hard. That would be hard. That was not going to do a whole lot.
You can do it, but why would you?
Right, there's probably better options.
Probably better options.
But yeah, so doing things to get them to overload defense in pretty much identical fashion to how you're going to be trying to think about it with Florentine, except for the fact that you are able to back off of a shot more easily with a down spear. It's a lot of times a safer prospect to do these sorts of things with a down spear, because if I come up to my opponent as a flow fighter and I try to like hip over here and sword over here, like hip shoulder sort of shot, if my opponent starts stepping in when I start throwing that hip, I'm about to eat death. And there's not a whole lot I can do about it. Whereas with the down spear, if I start going in and my opponent turtles and steps correctly, I can disengage and get back out of that situation. It's something to keep in mind is a lot of your offense stuff is going to be like a flow fighter. You just have a lot more options on your distance while you're doing it, and a lot of times you're safer while you're doing it. The disadvantage is that once they get inside, the flow fighter has two swords and you have one.
Right. So I'm going to grab a down spear again because I want to talk about some defense stuff.
Oh, do you want me to grab the shield or?
No, that's okay. You can keep either one. Doesn't matter.
Okay. So Jake can grab the down spear again, and he's going to go over some of the concepts that he's very familiar with that I may not utilize as much. We're going to find out.
Like I said earlier, a down spear, especially in the hands of a beginner, and fundamentally this applies to everybody fighting one. Hewitt not only is something you can stab with, but is a really skinny shield. It's just a little thin shield, very thin shield. So like Bighead said, he doesn't like to choke up very much because his outlook on downspear fighting is pretty much range control is king, and he's right. Range control is very much king in this type of fight, especially as someone who range controls in every other style of fighting that they do. You don't say anything negative about that.
Oh, right.
But
I take it as a compliment.
yeah, it's just very much lends to the style that he fights in, and that's fine. My style is a little more defensive. I tend to let people throw and block them a little bit before I return. But on the flip side of that same point, you mentioned alpha strikes a lot. That's very much me. I'll try to block one or two and then just get one really nice shot and move on. That's how I tend to fight, for better or for worse. But one thing that I do a lot, like I said, I try to block a couple shots usually in just about every fight. You'll usually see me gripping my downspear somewhere about here. Maybe a foot or so of handle above where my actual hand is. So you'll see me do that for a couple of reasons. So if you're fighting, you got your knees bent, you got your balance on the balls and your feet, you got your stance kind of, my stance tends to be a little wider for downspear. But so if I'm here, I've got coverage because of this for my chest and my shoulder and my right side. So like if you try to swing for my shoulder here, I've got a pretty easy, nice little passive block that I can just not have to do a whole lot with. I can sort of turn it in any direction I want to turn it. I can by turning my downspear, that's doing more than just giving me the block. It's also going to guide where your sword goes. So if I do like that, try it again. As opposed to like that, that's going to hit me in the face. So I don't want to do that. I want to turn it out. Or if I want to do this, I want to be ducking and be ready to come in with something else. So you'll see me do that a lot, not as much as I used to because I don't move quite the same way as I used to when I was a younger man. I like to get low, and I like to put my downspear kind of above my head.
Against your head.
Or against my head. I put it against my head because if you leave it above your head like this, they're going to swing at it, and this is going to hit you in the top of the head. It's not fun. So yeah, a lot of the time I'll actually put it on my head. And here, I'll show you why it works. So if I'm coming in low, especially if I want to get down here like this, and I'm like here, like it's natural because this thing is so small, they don't really see it as blocking as much as it really is. They don't see it as completely cutting off access to my shoulder and my bicep and stuff like that, as well as cutting off access from this angle to my hip. And that's the angle that people are going to want to come from, just naturally, especially in a fast-paced fight, an Amtgard fight. It's as you know, if you fight seriously, it's very much a game of predictive response. You can kind of know what someone's going to do most of the time, and you want to try to force them into just swinging at your block. The more they swing at your block, the more you're winning, honestly. And another good thing to do, I don't want to take up too much of the time here, with your choke up like this, is to kind of have a passive defense in front of you. So if I'm standing like this, I got my sword foot back, I got my downspear forward, I got my tip planted into my toe, and now I'm going to do this a little bit. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to pick the tip up off my toe. So now if he tries to sweep, since I have a lower grip on the downspear, it's going to serve a lot of the same purposes like kind of resting it on your foot. It's going to be a lot harder to move because instead of doing this with all this leverage, I've cut that not quite in half, but substantially. So it's a lot easier for me to kind of push back into that a little bit.
The forces involved are a lot more similar to like Florentine sword.
Right, exactly.
It's not so far away from your hand.
Exactly. So you got the tip way out here where all the weight's at, and they're banging into it, and it's like, oh god, now I got to recover all this. It's a lot easier to do it from here. So swing for my hip.
Quick grip.
Yep. So like, it looks like you can hit me in the hip pretty easily.
Yeah.
Like you should be able to wrap that no problem. You did that.
I went deep.
Yeah, you did. You went deep. So it's people see this, they see it as a weapon because it is one, and they're worried about getting stabbed in the pee-pee with it. So you can kind of just float it out in front of you a little bit, choke up so you don't get it knocked out of your hand, and if they're swinging for your hip, just turn it. Like, just kind of, like you did hit me a bit there. But, like, all you have to try to get. That's it. And then you'll hear that. That's how you know that you just beat them in that exchange. There's no worse feeling than fighting against a downspear guy and getting the when you tried to hit him in the hip.
There's no pretending at that point.
No, it's not, because people are just, you're going to see the look on their face. I've seen it so many times. People are just like, oh. But they were really thinking that was the end of the fight right then and there. So yeah, just if you're going to be in a defensive position, I recommend choking up a little bit. Depends on how much you're comfortable with it, how big your downspear is and stuff, of how much you're going to want to choke up. But so if this is the length of the whole downspear, I'm going to want about a third of that length above my hand. So I've got a little more control over it. Now I can't stand way back here and stab you like I can like this.
Yeah.
I don't have this option anymore. So you want to save this for when you know it's time to get close, or for when you know they're coming. They're going to close on you. That's when you want to shift to this.
Now, and my variation of that, which works because of the nature of how I fight. If someone's going to swing for my hip, they aren't going to be close enough to throw kind of half-hearted hip swings. They're going to be. If I've got a downspear, they're going to be committing to a big overblown shot over there.
Big old step and wrap.
So instead of choking up and leaning it to the side, I'm going to take a step obliquely to them.
Yep.
And put my spear out to the side, and it works very similarly to what I did before. So we're gonna take a step. This here. How about you go right there again? So if you were to commit a lot to the shot, I mean, no half measure here, right? The downspear is gonna hit me in the shin, and it's gonna stop down here. There's no way to drive through the downspear. It's not gonna power through my hand. It's not gonna power through my leg. So this is just kind of a hard stop. If someone really wants to commit, that's fine. And the nice thing is this leaves my sword open, so regardless of what his equipment is, if he's flow, if he's single sword, if he's sword board, I should have a lot of options. But the fact that he's very committed to a shot that I know cannot hit me anymore, I know that I'm kind of like jump-footed.
Yeah, we're like standing in a stop of.
Yeah. But this allows for things like forearm knee. This allows for things like I can hit his if he's committing to that shot, I can hit his sword side butt cheek almost, right? So it is a slight variation. This is why I don't choke up, is that the nature of how people throw shots on me is going to be very different from the nature of how people throw shots on me.
Yeah, most people aren't usually trying to throw shots like this on Tim.
Yeah,
because it's stupid to do so. You're overextending. You got your shoulder bound up into your neck. It's just not a comfortable or good way to throw shots.
And my response to that, which people who fight me know, is I'm going to lean back slightly on the counter swing.
Yep.
So I don't have to commit. If he wants to throw for a short sword side shoulder without putting footwork into it, he's just going to lose an arm, and then we're going to continue the fight.
If I'm not really on top of what I'm doing, then I'm not going to win that exchange pretty much at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, the as a normal height person against a taller person, your instinct is going to be to swing for the midsection.
Yeah.
Almost always.
You want to get close. You want to do that hip wrap.
You want to grind in there until you can get a hip wrap and move on. But you're almost never going to see someone trying to swing for these. I mean, it happens, especially against people that are your height. People your height will do it. Yeah. But people that aren't won't. I mean, why would you? It's just not a smart thing to do.
Yeah. So with downspear, we're going through. You're going to want to figure out how to prevent someone from charging you. You're going to want to have a plan on how to charge them, because you will get defensive fighters who just go, okay. You're in an open category against someone with a sword and board, and they're going to sit there and go, I'm not running you down.
That's when I like to do the double stab.
What was that?
So that's when I like to pull out the double stab. So the double stab, what I mean by that, is if you're fighting against somebody who's, if you want to grab the board.
Go ahead and talk to the camera.
Yeah, just, it's a good way to draw out that defensive fighter, and make them respond. Yeah, I don't know how.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Good luck.
We got there. We're there.
You made it. All right. So now, what I'm going to do, and I used to be able to do this to Tim a lot easier, but then he caught on, so now I can't really do it. Is I'm going to try to kind of throw some stuff out here, and then sort of make you want to close with me. So like you can see that I'm overstepping a range control shot here. Like I'm putting myself pretty firmly in range, and then sliding out. So I'm boom, boom, you know, and I'm guarding across my body with my downspear. My downspear is pretty well a blocking tool at this point. So I'm in and out. Now, if I can get him to take another step, I want to do this. I'm going to physically rest my downspear on my shoulder, stab it into his shoulder. Now, some boardmen will push up through their shield and block that. So, and if they do that, you just rotate into that next stab. So you're coming in, you get them to follow you for a couple steps, and that was a chop, not a stab.
It'll work pretty well.
Yeah, either way, chop or stab, whatever you want to do. You get them committed to that second step. You shoot really hard for this in a way that you're guarding your own shoulder and your back.
Now they're pushing up with the shield and surviving.
Now they're pushing up, and you can stab them, you can chop, you can do whatever you want. So that's something that used to work really well against you, actually.
But now, get a shield off, don't take my bow off.
Yeah,
I'll be okay. It's fine.
That shield I've had so much problems with, and it's my own fault. But anyway, so yeah, that's a thing I like to do a lot. I live really close to a police and fire station, so Roy, we're gonna wait for that to go away.
We're gonna edit that one out. That's fine.
Yeah. Just about every fire truck and police car that comes through my small St. Louis community goes down in front of my house. So that's my life. But anyway, another thing I think I know I already covered both of those things: the choke up block, the rest stab, or the double stab, whatever you want to call it. Other stuff that I do is pretty basic. Like I said earlier, getting someone to kind of follow your steps wins me a lot of fights for the downspear. Kind of baiting someone into chasing me down a little bit, just by kind of like, I'm gonna throw a couple shots, I'm gonna swing for arms and legs with my shoe, and then they're gonna, if I've worked the downspear at all, they're gonna see that and kind of be afraid of it. They're gonna see this as basically an invitation to press on this downspear, and just do whatever they got to do to get my downspear out of the picture. At which point I have won the fight. So if you do that, and I'm already prepared for you to do that, I'm probably just going to drop it right there, because I fight with a flat blade a lot. It's real easy for me to do that. So if I can kind of bait somebody into following me a little bit, another thing I'll do, that's when I stab with the downspear. Is if I can get you to take that step to follow me, that's when I'm going for the downspear kill right. I've done this to you before. It's not a smart thing to do, but it works much better against either someone who's not using a shield or someone who is relatively your same height. Doing it to someone taller than you can end in disaster for you. Just gonna preface this by saying that. But if you can get the situation set up where you can, get a good body fake. Actually, I probably want a body fake to this side to get your sword out of the way. So I'm gonna come down here, lean back, and stab for the chest. That's what I'm gonna stab for. And you can use your sword to do other things in the meantime. So I can come and fake like this, lean back, lean forward. So you kind of push, like kind of rock back a little bit, and then just rock right back forward. Now, like I said, you got to really get them committed to where you want them to be, or you're going to kill doing that. But it's really kind of nasty when it happens, and like it'll make the next fight against that person. They're going to think a lot harder about that downspear. Because getting stabbed in the chest or the shoulder by a downspear is a very humbling experience.
Especially if they put body weight behind it.
Oh yeah, a nice authoritative pocket stab with a downspear. People will think twice before trying that again. So just keep that in mind. That for me at least, I find that the stab works the best when I can kind of bait someone into the close. When I can get them to want to close with me, and I can be just enough out of range that I'm not in any real danger. So you're going to be working your sword, throwing some fakes, maybe throwing some kind of stuff that they're not going to. Stuff they're going to block with your down spear. Try not to hit them in the private area. So or do whatever, it's legal. Do what you need to do to win the fight.
You want to make them afraid of the down spear.
You want to make them really afraid of the down spear, yeah. but yeah. So try to bait that person into following you. Try to get them to step out of their stance a little bit, and that's when you're going to find those openings, or at least when I find them. You're going to find a lot of right beneath the chest line and above the belt line. That's home for your down. That's where it wants to be. Just send it on to its home.
Yeah. I had something I was going to talk about.
Sorry, I probably talked too much.
Oh no, we're good. Hopefully this can get edited out too. Yeah. Oh, so for me, another thing I get a lot of mileage out of is like doing stuff to throw them off of the rhythm. You will find players like build themselves up into trying something that they're kind of worried about.
But they still want to do it.
Yeah, so they know it's the right thing to do, but it takes them a moment to kind of, gird their loins, so to speak, to charge on in. So this is something I'll do a lot, where if it's against a sword and board fighter in particular, they'll kind of sit there and they're like, okay, let's do this, okay, and then they'll run at you. And if you can get them as they take that first step out of that run, if you can just stab them in the lower, like, third or quarter of the shield as hard as you can, just push that shield back into their body, it will take them much longer to prepare themselves next time.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a dirty trick, but it is one that really, really works.
Yeah.
If you can figure out where their hand is holding the strap of their shield and just punish that spot, they're basically at that point punching themselves in the chest. Like I said, it's not kind. It's not something you want to do to your friends or do
unless
it very
you really want to beat your
frequently.
friends.
Yeah, right. Unless it's really, unless it's important, you got to do it. I'm kidding, by the way. Don't take that seriously. But yeah, it is a good way to kind of give someone pause and kind of give them a little bit of a stun to where you can have a moment there of being able to do whatever you want, basically.
Yeah.
But if you can just sort of drive that handle, where they're holding their hand, back into their chest, they're not going to continue to move forward.
Well, and a little bit more kindly, if you can just knock their padding like into their belly, then like if I'm trying to work an angle on a shieldman, if I'm setting something up and they look like they're trying to power through that to charge me, convincing them not to do that allows me to continue my plan. And it shouldn't be anything particularly painful to stab someone's shield into their gut.
No.
I mean, like, it shouldn't be that bad. You might be able to, but
right.
If we're not trying, it will get them, though, to go like, okay, maybe new plan.
It's really easy to be mean and nasty and hurt people with a down spear, but you don't have to fight like that. Like, it's not like, oh, well, that's the only effective way to fight. It's not. You could be a very kind and gentle down spear fighter if you just will be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a weapon that is rife with dirty tricks, and none of which we're going to show you guys because this is a video for learning and hopefully for beginners to pick up some new stuff, and we don't want to teach people the wrong stuff to do.
Now, having mentioned, for beginners, I've talked about this before. I've taught downspear classes in Tal'Degor before. There is no such thing as a beginner downspear class.
That's true.
It simply doesn't exist. Beginner downspear class is intermediate single sword.
Right. You have to be at least an intermediate fighter to be an effective downspear fighter at all. If you put a downspear in the hands of someone who's brand new, they're probably going to have fun with it, and they're probably going to think that it's cool because it's pretty cool.
They will die.
They're not going to be very effective most of the time. I remember whenever I very first saw downspear, Hades had it, and I wanted to use it so bad, and he's like, no. And it was good of him to not let me because I would have not done it well. But later on, as I grew and got older and learned to fight, it became something I liked a lot. But yeah, this is not something I would recommend if it's your first year fighting, especially even your second year. give it some time, get really comfortable with what you're doing in terms of swinging, knowing when you get hit, knowing when you hit somebody else, and then start branching out into stuff like downspear, stuff like polearm. I wouldn't recommend a new person use a polearm either, because for one, they're usually not going to do it safely, because polearm's a hard weapon to use safely, even in the hands of an experienced fighter. And for two, they're probably not going to have a lot of success. They're probably going to be overswinging a lot, or be putting themselves in positions like, stuff you see on TV where you've got your spear way back here like this, and, stuff that might have actually worked if you were, bracing against guys on horseback.
Where you had 1,000 people next to you.
Well, yeah, you had 1,000 guys doing the exact same thing in the exact same outfit. But this is not that. So new players, stick with it a little while before you pick one of these up. If you feel like you're comfortable with, with Florentine and single sword and sword and shield, and you've been doing it for a while, and you don't feel like, there's a lot that you haven't yet picked up, or that you don't understand yet. Maybe you're not able to do it, but at least you kind of have an idea of what it is. I would recommend waiting before you start trying to use the downspear, because it's going to be discouraging. First and foremost, it's going to be really discouraging because it's hard to get the kills with it that you're going to be able to see people like Bighead get. He's going to kill in any given ditch round. He's going to kill at least 5 or 6 people before he dies, at least, if not everyone. If he's not the last one up.
Yeah, unless I die immediately, I usually get.
Right. Yeah, unless you can just single him out and take him out immediately, then you're gonna have problems. So it's very important to know yourself, to know your equipment, to know your ability before you start trying to do stuff you may not be comfortable with.
Like my big rule of thumb, honestly, when talking about downspear fighting for people who aren't experienced yet, is get to the point that you can go with a single sword against anyone, against open equipment, and you don't have to win consistently, but at least get to the point that you go, okay, this is what I should be doing to win. Make it so you have a plan no matter what the situation is, and then you can start to add a downspear to that equation. But if you're looking at a swordman going, I have no idea, or a shieldman going, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do against this guy, when you have a single short sword, the downspear is not right for you yet.
It's not time.
So
you'll get there. Don't worry, you'll get there.
Yeah, so that is my big piece of advice there. So cycling back to the downspear, we have you're talking about wanting to close. You're talking about wanting to, or knowing when to close, knowing how to close, and how to prevent your opponent from closing successfully, which are a lot of similar concepts with slightly different applications.
Yep.
Downspears are also great, like I said, for engaging multiple people. One of my absolute favorite things to do is to half-heartedly commit to a shot to the guy in front of me and watch them take a step back out of it, but the shot was actually meant for the person next to them, because it's very hard for the person next to them to read, because they see me doing something that would hit the person in front of me, they see the person in front of me reacting, and they kind of pass that out of their mind.
They've tuned it out at that point.
Yeah, so you can get decent kills, you can get decent wounds on people off of just, like if I am fighting Kenshin here, and I go to swing for this leg, if he were to step back out of it, and then like into that person's hip, that's a valid strategy that works much more than people would like to admit. It is shockingly effective because of just the fact that again, someone paying attention out of the corner of their eye, they're going to see me swinging at Kenshin, they're going to see him responding safely and effectively to that, and there's usually very little brain power left over for, wait, what happens then? Like use the length of the spear to your advantage, do what you can to get the kills where you can. Against the person in front of you, great. Against the person next to them, awesome. Against the person next to that person, even better. Yeah. You can start to turn the tide very, very quickly by stabbing the right person in the right way at the right time. Find the linchpin of the defense that's within your immediate sphere, kill that person, watch the several people that you're fighting crumble to the several people that are next to you, and then move on to the next group. So it's really effective for stuff like that. I guess we should definitely talk about like tournament fighting.
Yeah, that's something we should definitely mention. And I find that a lot of my downspear fighting tactics work better in a one-on-one situation. I tend to get a little, I don't want to say overconfident because it's not necessarily overconfidence. It's just, I get tunnel vision on fighting the guy that I'm trying to kill, and I'll put myself in bad positions for the guys that I'm not trying to kill right now, and then I will die because of that. So, oh, that's our time. We're getting played off.
We should wrap up pretty quickly.
Wrap it up.
We'll go through some tournament stuff. I need to edit some stuff out anyway.
We'll do some editing and things like that. But basically, in a tournament, it's all about keeping yourself safe. It's all about not succumbing to your own mistakes in a way that the other person can capitalize on. Yeah. So you have to really, really minimize the amount of mistakes you're able to make, which is a hard thing to do, especially fighting with a downspear. It's in the way that I fight particularly, it's easy to open yourself up if you don't do something right.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is if you're fighting in a tournament with a downspear, as much as I love them, don't use a stab only. Be ready to slash with it. Be ready to take people's legs out and to basically just dictate the fight on your own terms from that point on. Especially against the shieldmen. If you leg a shield guy and you're a downspear fighter, they're going to think they've won the fight. 9 times out of 10, they're going to think that you're dead, that you have just screwed up by wounding them. When in fact, that is not often the case. Because for some people maybe if you're not using your feet, but if you're able to use your feet and you're able to kind of make that forward person, lull them into that sense of security to think this is an easy fight for them now, you will blow them up. I do it to Charlie pretty often. I do it to him pretty often.
Yeah, so we have talked a bit about like sword and board, single sword against downspear. I mentioned this in the single sword class. It's about the worst matchup you can do as single. So there's not a whole lot to say about that. Hit him in the leg, overwork their defense. They have to do like 9 things at the same time perfectly, and if any of those goes wrong, they die right then. So as a downspear fighter, just wait for them to not do things perfectly and get the kill.
Yeah, you block if you gotta. Wait, just kind of hold the defense until they run out of stuff to do, because they will run out of stuff to do before you do.
Yeah.
Because their options are very limited compared to yours.
So against Flow, that's not a great matchup for Flow usually either. Again, you're using the polearm aspect of the downspear. Flow versus polearm tends to be very, very bad for the Flow fighter. So don't worry overly about Flow fighters. Try to stab them, try to make them close with you, try to make them overcommit to blocks, and recognize that if they don't block with like good efficiency, that short sword is going to kill them when they get there. So the one thing that I do want to talk about, because again, if you're against a polearm with a downspear, like you're in trouble. Close with them, do what you can.
If you're in a dish, just find a shield friend.
Yeah, find a shield friend. Throw them at the polearm.
Yeah, let them deal with that.
But so what I do think is worth talking about is downspear against downspear in tournaments. Now my personal experience with this is that for most downspear on downspear fights, it's going to end very, very similarly. Both of you want to stab the other person, and both of you want to block with the sword. If you're talking about righty versus righty, if you're talking about having the downspear on opposite sides, Jake here is going to want to try to stab me in the stomach. I'm going to want to stab him in the stomach. We're both going to be blocking very similarly with this.
A lot of this motion.
My personal experience is that the person who throws first loses most, because it's very difficult to accurately block while trying to commit to a shot, but it's not super hard to accurately commit to a shot while trying to block. So that sounds weird, but it's very, very true. If Jake is going to take a step forward and swing at me, I've got a good chance of blocking here and then kind of auto-throwing a shot into his belly while he's doing that. Whereas he's going to have a very difficult time auto-sweeping that block aside while committing to the shot in the first place.
Yep, hard to do 2 things at once.
It's very hard to do 2 things at once, and if you're going to mess one up, mess up the shot a little bit, because messing up a block a little bit is just death.
That's how you die. Yeah.
So outside of that, if your opponent recognizes the fact that they don't want to throw first from the outside, then it starts to work into how to react to different ranges. And I talked about this in the single short sword class, but if I can get to here, we haven't thrown yet, right? Going in and faking a stab and then wrapping up into that forearm is a very, very effective strategy. Once you can get that down spear out, you should win that fight then and there. Legging the person is sometimes very convenient, mostly because that means that an arm is now a death, not because a leg down spear fighter can't do things, especially against another down spear, you can't just passively rush in at them. But it makes things much more difficult, much more quickly, because the person who's not legged gets to decide how they want to fight, and also they can lose an arm in a trade and still win, and if you lose an arm in a trade, you die then. So relatively basic stuff, but really the try not to throw first from the outside. At least try not to commit to a shot where your opponent can stab back. If I'm going to be the one who stabs first, a lot of times I'm going to sit back. I'm going to stab, but I'm going to keep my sword, instead of keeping it in a neutral spot like I would normally do, I'm going to start putting it down towards the block as I start to come up for the stab. I'm going to go up here. I'm gonna stab. Jake's gonna cycle my stab out, and then if he's going to throw at me at this point, at least I can. This motion isn't hard to do even while you're doing other stuff. It's not super likely, but if I think, you know what, actually I think I might be able to get that stab. I'm going to come in. I'm going to here, and I'm going to put my sword down.
Cut off.
Yeah. Now, again, that's if I think that I can get the shot. What I really, really want to do is to bait my opponent into throwing that shot. I want him to come in. I want him to throw that stab. Joy, boom, awesome. So that's what I've got there. Are there any other things you really want to cover?
Not in a class type setting. If you guys have questions about the dirty tricks, message me. But they're not safe for human consumption. But yeah, basically just keep in mind that there's no one way really to do this. There's a lot of ways that are acceptable. There's plenty of ways that are unacceptable. But there's a lot of ways that you can fight effectively with a down spear. It's a lot of fun. If you're thinking about getting into it, give it a shot. Work with somebody who's got some experience with it. Ask them for some help, especially someone who already knows how you fight. If you're friends with an experienced fighter that uses down spear a lot, and then you can say, hey, what are some tips you can give me for how I fight if I were to use a down spear? People are really willing to teach if they've got anything to teach. So always be asking. If you want help, just ask for it, and it's there. Other than that, I think we covered a lot in a short time. I don't think there's really anything else that I think is super pertinent that we have to go over to consider this a down spear class.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I would say at this point really is be as mobile as possible. Down spear, more than any other equipment type except for single short sword, exactly how you are placed in regards to your opponent is going to dictate the fight much more than the size of the shield and things like that. So be light on your feet, continue moving,
and try to get your opponent to swing. Try to bait him into swinging a bad swing.
Yeah, essentially. But yeah, a static down spear fighter is generally a dead down spear fighter very quickly. So which is a large part of why it's not great for new fighters, is because you again have to be doing a couple of things right at the same time.
There's a lot to think about.
You have to be moving. You have to be moving your left arm in the right way. You have to be moving your right arm in the right way, and your feet have to be doing stuff while that's all going on. So that's about it. Gonna end it here. Hopefully I can edit this and we'll all be okay.
We'll figure it out. Thanks for watching.